The family no one expected to become victims. July 22nd, 2007. Cheshire, Connecticut. It was a peaceful town where suburban streets wound past spacious homes and manicured lawns. A place where families seemed destined to live out their lives without ever facing anything truly horrific. Yet, within the span of a few hours that night, a home on Sorghum Mill Road became the epicenter of one of the most shocking crimes in Connecticut's history. The Petits were not a family living in danger. They had no ties to the criminal underworld and no known enemies. They were simply an ordinary family enjoying their lives. Dr. William Petit Jr. was a respected endocrinologist. He had built a solid medical career and was known for his dedication to his patients. His wife, Jennifer Hawk Petit, also worked in healthcare, having served as a nurse before taking on a role at Cheshire Academy. Jennifer suffered from multiple sclerosis, yet those who knew her said the disease never diminished her optimism or her devotion to others. They had two daughters, Hayley and Michaela. Hayley, 17, had just graduated from high school and was poised to begin a new chapter of her life. She had been accepted to Dartmouth College. She was an excellent student and athlete who was particularly passionate about fundraising for multiple sclerosis, the very disease her mother was battling. She had her whole future ahead of her. Michaela was just 11 years old. She loved cooking and often enjoyed preparing meals for her family. To Michaela, the most important things in life back then were simple: family, home, dinners together, and the older sister she deeply admired. On the afternoon of July 22nd, Jennifer took Michaela out to get food. They stopped at a local supermarket to buy ingredients for dinner. Neither mother nor daughter knew that this ordinary shopping trip would become the first link in a chain of events leading to a tragedy. Two men were in the store that day, Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisaryevsky. Both had criminal records. Hayes had repeatedly encountered the criminal justice system. Komisaryevsky also had a history of crime and serious drug issues. The two had met through addiction recovery circles. They should have been under close supervision, yet in the summer of 2007, both were free. And that evening, they spotted a target. According to evidence later presented in court, Komisaryevsky noticed Jennifer and Michaela at the supermarket. He followed them and discovered where they lived. It was a seemingly wealthy family, a large house, a father who was a doctor, a family he assumed had money. Initially, the plan appeared to be nothing more than a burglary, but subsequent events revealed that the situation went far beyond a typical break-in. That evening, Hayes and Komisaryevsky communicated with each other. The messages exchanged between them would later become crucial evidence in the case. They did not speak like men who had stumbled into an unforeseen situation. They spoke like individuals preparing for a deliberate course of action. While the Petit family prepared for bed, the two men were closing in on their home. No one in the family knew they had become targets. No one knew that a peaceful life was about to be shattered. And no one knew that, within just a few hours, 3 family members would be dead. Forced entry. In the night. In the early hours of July 23, 2007, Cheshire was shrouded in silence. The Petit family was asleep, William Petit downstairs, and Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela upstairs. Then, the intruders appeared. While accounts vary regarding the exact timing of the break-in, it is indisputable that Hayes and Komisaryevsky entered the home that night. William Petit was awakened and struck with a baseball bat, sustaining severe injuries. The intruders then bound him and took him to the basement, where he was beaten and left critically injured. Yet William remained conscious. He did not know what was happening upstairs. He only knew that strangers had invaded his home and that his family was at their mercy. Upstairs, Jennifer and her 2 daughters were also subdued and bound. The intruders claimed it was merely a robbery and promised no harm would come to them if they cooperated. But it was a lie, as the ensuing hours would prove. Hayley and Michaela were held captive in the house, while Jennifer was forced to comply. The intruders ransacked the home, searching for money, valuables, and financial information. Yet, even as they hunted for cash, a far more terrifying scenario was unfolding. They no longer simply wanted to take the property and leave. One of the most critical moments occurred when Jennifer was taken from the house. She was forced to accompany Hayes to a bank, the goal being to compel her to withdraw money. Yet, Jennifer saw an opportunity. She realized her time might be running out and knew her two daughters were still being held captive in the house, so she attempted to signal for help. At the bank, a staff member noticed something amiss. Jennifer could not speak freely, but her behavior conveyed that a serious situation was unfolding. A 911 call was placed. Police began receiving information. A woman might be held against her will, a man was detaining her, and others might be held captive in the house. Officers were quickly dispatched. However, a problem remained. The people inside the house had not yet been rescued, and the kidnappers were unaware of exactly how much the police knew. When Hayes brought Jennifer back to the house, the situation escalated into even greater danger. Komisaryevsky was still there. Hayley and Michaela remained bound, and William was still injured in the basement. But now, the perpetrators' plan shifted. They knew time was running out. The police could arrive at any moment. Instead of fleeing, the men made a horrific decision, one that would make this case a symbol of brutality. Gasoline was brought into the house, flammable materials were gathered, and preparations were made to set a fire. Down in the basement, William Petit was still alive. He heard sounds from above. He did not know exactly what was happening, but he knew something terrible was afoot. Then, he began to smell smoke. The flames and the escape. The house began to be consumed by a sea of flames. Smoke spread rapidly. Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela remained trapped inside. For the mother and her two daughters, there was no easy escape. The intruders were now attempting to cover their tracks. However, the fire made no distinction between the guilty and the innocent. It swept through the entire house. Temperatures soared. The smoke grew thick. While the three women were trapped upstairs, William Petit faced a harrowing choice. To live, he had to save himself. Despite severe injuries, he struggled to break free from his bonds, painfully inching his way through a desperate fight for survival. He made his way to a basement window and finally managed to escape. William crawled out. Though exhausted, he had survived. A neighbor spotted him and realized the horror unfolding. Police began arriving at the scene. Officers saw the flames, then watched as two men, Hayes and Komisaryevsky, stepped out and got into a car. Police attempted to block their path, but the men refused to surrender. Their car rammed a police vehicle, sparking a brief but chaotic chase. Eventually, the car was cornered, and officers subdued the suspects. Hayes and Komisaryevsky were taken into custody. Yet, a tragedy was still unfolding inside the house. Firefighters continued to battle the blaze. With every passing minute, the chances of survival for those trapped inside grew increasingly slim. Only when the fire was finally brought under control could rescue teams begin to enter. And they discovered what no one wanted to see. Jennifer Hawk Petit was dead. Hayley was dead. Michaela was dead too. Three women from the same family had lost their lives in the span of just a few hours. William was the sole survivor. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Yet, upon regaining consciousness, he faced a truth far more painful than any physical injury. He had lost his wife and 2 daughters. The home, that had held a lifetime of family memories, was now nothing more than a charred crime scene. Meanwhile, the 2 men responsible for this tragedy were taken into custody by the police. Investigators began piecing together the events of that horrific night, minute by minute. Surveillance footage from the bank, gas station cameras, mobile phones, text messages, crime scene evidence, forensic samples, witness testimonies. Together, they formed a haunting picture. This was not a robbery that had accidentally spiraled into a massacre. The evidence indicated that the perpetrators had taken the time to plan, prepare, and make deliberate decisions. As the investigation deepened, police gathered an increasing amount of evidence against the 2 men. Text messages revealed prior communication between Hayes and Komisarjevsky. Bank footage showed Hayes standing beside Jennifer as she was forced to withdraw money. Gas station cameras captured Hayes purchasing fuel. Komisarjevsky's phone contained data related to the victims. These pieces gradually formed an almost irrefutable case against them. Yet, the biggest question remained: how were 2 men with criminal records able to walk free in society? And could this tragedy have been prevented? The trial and the death sentence. The Cheshire case quickly became one of the most high-profile cases in Connecticut. Prosecutors had to prove more than just the fact that Hayes and Komisarjevsky were present at the house. They had to demonstrate that this was a series of deliberate actions, that the 2 men knew exactly what they were doing, and that the resulting deaths were no accident. Stephen Hayes was the first to stand trial. Proceedings began in 2010, with prosecutors presenting a wealth of evidence: text messages, surveillance footage, witness testimony, and forensic findings. The events that unfolded inside the house were reconstructed for the jury, with each piece of evidence adding another part of the story. Hayes was there. Hayes participated in the break-in. Hayes took Jennifer to the bank. Hayes bought gasoline. And then, 3 women died in the burning house. Ultimately, the jury found Hayes guilty. During the sentencing phase, prosecutors sought the maximum penalty allowed under Connecticut law at the time. The jury agreed, and Hayes was sentenced to death. But the case was not over yet. Joshua Komisarjevsky subsequently faced his own separate trial. Prosecutors once again presented similar evidence. This time, however, particular attention was focused on his phone and related digital data. Text messages exchanged between the 2 men were presented, and experts explained data recovered from electronic devices. This evidence highlighted Komisarjevsky's role in the crime. Defense attorneys attempted to present the context of his life, highlighting issues from his past, and asking the jury to consider them when determining his sentence. But for the victim's family, those explanations could not undo what had happened. 3 people were dead. 1 survivor was left with a shattered life. and the only remaining question was, what punishment was fitting? Komisarjevsky was also convicted. The jury recommended the death penalty. Both men were sent to death row, but the history of Connecticut law was about to change. In 2012, Connecticut abolished the death penalty for crimes committed after the law took effect. Initially, this did not directly apply to Hayes and Komisarjevsky because their case had occurred in 2007. However, in 2015, the Connecticut Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling regarding the constitutionality of carrying out the death penalty for those who had committed crimes before the practice was abolished. Consequently, the death sentences in the Cheshire case were commuted to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For many, this was a controversial decision. Some argued that the two killers deserved the ultimate punishment. Others maintained that once a state had decided to abandon capital punishment, it was inappropriate to continue carrying it out on those awaiting execution. That debate was not merely a matter of legal documents. It deeply affected those who had lost loved ones. William Petit had spoken of his loss. He had lost not only his wife, but also both his daughters, and no sentence could bring them back. Ultimately, Hayes and Komisarjevsky both received sentences of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. They would die in prison. But for the Petit family, that marked only the end of a trial, not the end of their grief. Those who never returned. Some cases end when a suspect is arrested. Some end when a jury delivers a verdict. But there are cases that never truly end. The Petit family case falls into this third category. For William Petit, July 23, 2007, is not merely a day in the past, it is the day that split his life in two, before and after. Before that day, he was a doctor, a husband, and a father. After that day, he became the sole survivor of his family. Jennifer was gone. Hayley was gone. Michaela was gone. The rooms that once held his children's laughter became places that evoked memories. Yet, William chose not to let his family's story be defined solely by a murder case. He continued his work. He rebuilt his life. He remarried and had more children, but he never forgot his first family. Memorial initiatives and charitable foundations were established to carry on the causes Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela cared about, particularly research into and support for those with multiple sclerosis. Hayley had wanted to help fight the disease her mother suffered from. Michaela had dreamed of one day taking over her sister's fundraising efforts. Those dreams were cut short, yet in a way, they live on through the survivors. The case also raised broader questions. Two men with criminal histories had been free. Could the system have recognized the extent of their danger sooner? Were there warning signs that had been overlooked? Is the supervision of repeat offenders strict enough? And what should the justice system do when those who have committed serious crimes return to the community? There are no simple answers. Yet, in the wake of the Cheshire case, these questions cannot be brushed aside. The case also became part of the debate over the death penalty. One side looks at the brutality of the crime and argues that the two perpetrators deserved the ultimate punishment. The other side looks at legal principles and argues that a society that has abandoned the death penalty should not resume carrying it out. Two opposing views. Yet, amidst this debate, there is a truth that neither side can alter. Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela will never return. Jennifer will never again walk into her workplace to care for the students who adored her. Hayley would never walk through the gates of Dartmouth College as a student. Michaela would never stand in the family kitchen preparing dinner for her loved ones. 3 lives, 3 futures, 3 stories cut short in a single night. And perhaps the most painful aspect of this case is the loss of the ordinary things. A dinner, a shopping trip, a home, a family. Things we often take for granted as constants in our lives. The Cheshire case also reminds us that great tragedies can stem from the smallest moments. A glance in a supermarket, a car following behind, a text message, a decision, a door left open at night. Then came a series of irreversible choices. 2 perpetrators chose violence. They chose to break in. They chose to kidnap. They chose to terrorize a family. And ultimately, they chose to kill to cover up their crimes. Yet, this story should not be defined by those 2 names. It should be remembered for the 3 lives lost. Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela. A mother, a young woman on the threshold of her future, and a child of just 11. They were not merely names in a court file. They were human beings with loved ones, dreams, and tomorrows they should have lived to see. Thousands gathered to honor their memory. Candlelight glows within the Cheshire community. Those small lights cannot undo what has happened, yet they convey a powerful message that the lives lost are still remembered. And sometimes, amidst the darkest of crimes, what remains in the end is not fear, but memory. Memories of lives lived, of a family sharing laughter, and of dreams left unfulfilled. It serves as a reminder that behind every statistic in a murder case lies a human being. The legal proceedings regarding the Petit family tragedy have concluded. The 2 perpetrators will never walk free. Yet, for those who loved Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela, the story never truly ends. Justice may put a killer behind bars, but no verdict can restore a family. That is precisely why the Cheshire case continues to haunt so many people today, not merely because of the perpetrator's actions, but because of what 3 innocent souls were denied the chance to do. A mother who would never see her children grow up, a young woman who would never enter college, a child who would never reach adulthood. 3 lives, 1 family, 1 night of terror, and a story that America will remember long after the final courtroom doors have closed. If you are interested in true crime cases, evidence-based investigations, and objective analysis of how crimes are solved, please subscribe and follow our channel to join us for future true crime features.